But the beautiful part about Africa is that labor is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's cheap. That's the easy part. Like, all that's easy. Like, that's the easy part. The mistake I made was announcing it before I got started.
All right. Welcome to Pan-African Perspectives. Today we talk about why Akon City failed, the $6 billion African dream that crashed. These are going to be some business lessons for the diaspora. My name is Joe Hatagwa, and I talk about real-life experiences, visiting Africa, moving to the continent of Africa, and investing in African ventures. We talk about buying land, and we also talk about the ultimate goal of advancing Africa and restoring it to its rightful place on the world stage. I lived on the continent of Africa for 4 years. I've been investing in Africa for over 8 years, and I've been traveling around the continent of Africa for that time as well. So our mission is to support an independent Africa and empower African people on the continent or in the diaspora. So whether you're currently in Africa, you've recently migrated, your ancestors were trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade, or you're a foundational Black American, this live stream is for you. I'm here each week to share my experiences and also those of others. This is a cautionary tale. We are talking about Akon's experience buying and attempting to develop land in his home country of Senegal. Someone who lived on the continent in his early years, who also planned to build something substantial. And everybody's talking about it, so we're going to talk about it right here, right now. So before we get back into that video where Akon expresses what went wrong, I thought I could give you guys a little bit of a history of how we got to this point. We've talked about what Idris Elba and Shaka Stevens are doing in Sierra Leone. And, how people were thinking that it could end up in the same place as what's happening with Akon City. It's a little bit different, and I'm going to explain why. But let me first give you guys, what is actually happening here. So before we get into it, somebody asked, do you brothers ever talk about being indigenous Americans and not being African American? Not all of our ancestors can't from Africa. Truth be told, America is the land of milk and honey. Unfortunately, that's misinformed because everybody came from Africa. It's just when they came from Africa, right? So let's be very clear on that, number one. So number two, as it pertains to foundational Black Americans, I know there's a lot of conversations about that, and I don't want to get into a discussion about when foundational Black Americans came to America. There are a lot of disputes on that, but just know that in terms of human history starting on the continent of Africa, that's where it started. So let's just start there. So everybody's African to begin with. Now, when those folks came to America is a different conversation, and that's a conversation for another time. I don't want to spend too much time on that because today we're talking about what happened with Akon City in Senegal and why it failed. So let's get into the history of that. First of all, let me know that you guys can hear me. Phoenix Indigo says, hello, Sensei. Shout out to Phoenix Indigo. And then Manelik says, good afternoon, bro. What's up, Manelik? What's going on? We're trying a new format for the live stream today. Hopefully you guys can see me, you can hear me well, and this is working for you. We're going to try this format, the long form format. I hope this is a little bit better for you guys to see and hear me. So it's not so small, especially when you guys are watching on your mobile phones. Manelik says you can hear me now loud and clear. That's dope. P. Rodusa says I'm half Cherokee and FBA annoys me. Okay, well, we are not going to get into a debate on FBA and ADOS and all of that today. That is not the conversation today. I want to bring on folks who come from those groups and allow them to have those discussions. We won't be doing that here. We want to have some experts on to have those conversations because I want to do everybody justice. But we're not talking about that today. Today we're talking about Akon City. So Akon City was an ambitious $6 billion Wakanda-inspired futuristic city project in Senegal. It faced significant setbacks and is essentially abandoned. So now, while Akon actually secured 136 acres of land for the project in 2020, missed payments, slow developments led to the Senegalese government reclaiming most of the land. The project, which was supposed to feature a hospital, university, and be powered by solar energy and Akoin cryptocurrency, has seen limited progress, with only a youth center, a basketball court, and an information center built to date. So here are the key issues and some of Akon's regrets. Akon's inability to meet construction deadlines and financial obligations led to the government's decision to reclaim the land. We have a new president, and I think he decided he wanted to make sure that some progress was going to be made. Limited progress is also one of the issues, right? The project failed to materialize beyond a few initial structures, with the promised infrastructure like a hospital, school, and shopping mall not even being built. And then the cryptocurrency, Akoin. The Akoin cryptocurrency, intended to be the primary payment method within Akon City, but has also struggled, with Akon himself admitting it wasn't managed properly. And that was according to the BBC. Now, let's be very clear. When it comes to these different cryptocurrencies, there's been a lot of misuse, mishandling, and miscommunication around them. And I think it was smart for Akon to kind of back out of that idea and not to make it a front-facing focus of the things he's doing moving forward. In 2020, when he first announced it, there was a lot of excitement about it. But with everything from the Trump coin to the Haktua coin to the trouble that Tom Brady and all those other people got into with all of these cryptocurrencies, I think it's smart for Akon to take a step back and to look at things from a new lens. Now, also the public perception. There are public perceptions that Akon City was more of a vanity project than a genuine attempt to develop the area, which I don't think that, just from my own personal experience watching what Akon was up to. I just think that there were a lot of challenges. So let's go into the current status, and then we'll get back into this video to hear his explanation. So first of all, the Senegalese government is now pursuing a more realistic $1 billion resort development at the same site. So, look, it was a $6 billion African dream. Now it's a $1 billion. That's still a significant amount of money, but the government seems to be involved heavily in this process moving forward. Now, they have said that Akon still retains a small portion of the land and may be involved in the new development project. Now, while Akon initially denied that the project was scrapped, reports from BBC, MSN, and others indicate that it has been abandoned from its original form. The government is also seeking funding to develop the area, and Akon still may play a role in that process since he's a known entity. He seems to be able to raise funding. He has quite a substantial amount of funding himself. So in essence, Akon City, as initially envisioned, is no longer happening. The Akon and Akon has faced criticism and regret for the project's lack of progress and unmet promises. I want to quickly show you what Akon City was supposed to look like, because it really does look like something out of a movie, and there are all kinds of different images that people had for what it was supposed to look like. So let me share my screen really quickly and show you this, because I think it really helps to kind of get a visual aid of what it was supposed to look like. It is wild to think that this was where we were going to go with this, with the $6 billion project. I'm not even sure $6 billion would actually build this. So let me share the screen. I'll share a particular tab. Let's see. All right. So I don't know how much of this you can see, but let's double click into a particular image. Let's see if we can get this, and let's see if I can zoom in on this image. But this was one of the images that was being shown. Oh, you guys can't even see that, right? Because I shared a different screen. Let me try that again, because I think it's really important to see how this was meant to look, right? And then like I said, we'll get into his response, but I just wanted to show you guys this so you guys can get an idea of the futuristic style look. And this was an image that was shared broadly, often. Like, I mean, this is how people were explaining that this was what it was going to look like. So this is what the planned look and feel of the project was supposed to be, right? I mean, very futuristic. It was all supposed to be run on solar, very green. You see all the greenery around the trees and whatnot. And so he's going to explain the size of the project, because you have different images that show like almost a New York City looking skyline, which is less realistic of what it was supposed to be. But this right here is what the planned look and feel was supposed to be. All right, so let me get back into some more of the questions and comments. So Kwame's here. Shout out to him. Okay. Jada says, I don't like the new format, Joe. I like doing multiple things at once on my phone, and this is really crushing my vibe. Okay, sorry about that. You guys let me know if you like the new format, if this works for you, because it does have to be a consensus. But I got you, Jada. I understand that you don't like it. I appreciate that. But what I found from other people is that they always found that they couldn't really see everything that we were showing on screen. And so we'll see. We'll see. Kwame says this is sad what happened. Tim Black says, I don't think he had much government support. P. Rodusa says, the thing about construction projects, you need workers that know how to work and capable to do the job. Lovely Dove says, wow, I never trusted none of them. Wow, okay. Seasons as my teacher says, Senegal, this successful development and complete the Museum of Black Civilizations. I think that there was maybe a language transfer. Lovely Dove says, whoa. I think Kwame says, not me either. Is that not you either? You don't like the new format? If you guys don't like the new format, we'll stop doing it. But we'll keep it for today because we have to, unfortunately. That's the only option I have for right now. Now, this is also because this is streaming live on Instagram. So it does have to work on the format for Instagram because the way it's been before for Instagram, with a tiny little look, just didn't work for Instagram. So that's also why we're doing it this way. And it seems to be keeping more people's attention on Instagram showing up this way than how we had done it before. So those of you who don't like the new format on YouTube, feel free to watch it on Instagram. That way you'll be able to see the full screen format on Instagram better. But the African Chronicle says they don't like oh wow. Phoenix Indigo says they like the old format. African Chronicle says they like the old format. Okay. All right. Now, M. Smith says it seems to not have been a well-planned, organized project in terms of having clear start and end dates for each phase, nor did his team seem to be experts. One can have drawings because of AI. Very true. The African Chronicle says, this is why we're not moving forward. Too many talking and promises, not enough proper doing. Okay. So that's all the comments for now. Now let's get into the rest of what he had to say.
Because once I announced it, people thought it already existed. So that's why that time that you're talking about, that seems like that's long. The moment it came on my mind, I said, cool, I'm going to announce it. And then through that announcement, I'm going to find the support. I'm going to find the financing. And I'm going to find the people that actually have the infrastructure to help me pull this thing together. Right? What I didn't calculate was the moment I announced it, people thought this shit was already existing.
Yeah,
because just the studies alone, from the environmental study, soil study, like just the studies alone took 2.5 years. And
I just went through those studies.
Yeah, it's no joke. The studies alone, and mind you, the study was happening during COVID, when half the people and engineers couldn't even travel to Africa.
Couldn't travel.
So mind you, that timeline in between, and people like Akon City's coming, and you see the video all through the internet, you seeing the whole thing, you seeing the idea. So people like, yo, when we coming? When was gonna happen? And now the oligarchs are like, yo, this is actually possible.
All right, so I'll pause it there and come back. So yeah, I mean, look, what Akon is saying is he spoke about it too soon. Right? He was not ready yet to go prime time, and he spoke about it too soon. As many people have already mentioned, he did not have a full proper team in place, investments in place. What Idris Elba is doing differently is one is getting insurance set up. He's working on already getting partners to already agree to start the process. And 3, he got it codified in the government of Sierra Leone. So no matter what happens in Sierra Leone, if the government changes over, there's a dedication to moving forward with this. I'm not really sure all of those levels of details were done when Akon did this for Senegal. So let's get back to some of the questions and comments. So Wada ATL says, greetings. Are you saying that the government is pivoting to use the same plot of land for a resort in terms of tourism versus development? Can you see this chat? Yes, I can see the chat. So what it sounds like is they are moving forward with a resort for sure. And we will see what goes beyond that resort. Now, some of the buildings and the structures that I already mentioned, there was a basketball court and a couple of other buildings. Those will remain. And it seems like Akon remains in control of that aspect and that element. He doesn't speak about that in this particular interview, but it does mean that. Now, Blacklisted ESQ said, did anyone think an AI rendering of a city meant it actually existed? Now, to be fair to Akon, in 2020, ChatGPT, all the different AI formats and all the, Leonardo.ai and all of that, these AIs did not exist. So that rendering was a drawing. So it's not an AI drawing, but it was a drawing. But yeah, that is definitely how it was. That was how it was planned, right? You have to have a drawing to begin with, right? You always have to have like a blueprint. So they started with the drawing. It just did not come to fruition. Phoenix Indigo said, how much of the $6 billion did he raise? From what I understand, a fraction of the amount. Because I think one of the challenges is if you don't have insurance, people can't be sure that they're going to get their money back if things fail. Jada says, I think the government let him lay the groundwork and now is going behind his back to take would-be investors and do their own thing. That's possible. I think you also have to take into consideration, though, that the groundwork seems to have been limited, right? So, and this is a completely different government who is way more about progress and making things happen than their predecessors, according to people on the ground. And so I'm not too sure there's some, according to Akon, he'll say that it seems as if there were probably some other factors at play. And of course, he would know best since he's the person in the process. He did do this under a previous administration. This was a 5-year-long project, but in terms of what was built and the money that was raised, I don't think it went far enough for any government to would have allowed it to continue in kind of a stagnant phase, right? If there's going to be all this press about it, they'd like to see more happening. So let me get back to this discussion, and then we'll give some more comments on the other side.
Real investors with real money, like we're going to put in a certain amount of dollars to be a part of this thing.
I'm wondering, how big was the city going to be circumference, like miles? Like how large?
It's 500 hectares, which equals to about almost 2,000 acres.
Okay.
So it's a small city. Right off the water, too. Like,
got you. So that's what was
it's almost like Vegas.
What was considered?
It's like Vegas.
So like Vegas, the size of it was going to be like Las Vegas. And he's going to mention here in the next part of his video a portion of what Vegas looked like. But that is a substantial size, though. Talking about, that many acres is a substantial amount of space to fill to only have the amount of buildings that were built so far. RNDC Music says, I can't hear anything but Adam 22 at the table and Whack, both detrimental to our people. Yeah, I can't speak to Whack 100 and Adam 22 and what you feel about them. I understand that's how you feel. This is specifically to be Akon speaking about this topic. This is one of the only times he's actually spoken about this. So that's why we are referencing this particular interview. I would not say any disparaging remarks about those folks. The only thing I would say is they do have a Liberian American on staff, and they should have had that Liberian American in this discussion as someone who has friends and family in Liberia, and who's actually gone to Liberia. So just so you guys know, in terms of square footage, because the question was, how big is Las Vegas? Somebody asked that question. It's 135.9 miles squared. So this was supposed to be a fraction of that, but still rather large, though. So I hope that answers that question. But this was supposed to be a fraction of that. Some other thoughts and comments that came from the folks. Manelik says, it's always best to work in silence until the job is completed, especially when there are some who wish not to see you succeed. And let me tell you guys something. I've learned this lesson myself. You guys might remember I have made announcements on things that I was launching and things that I was going to do. And you have to take into consideration, this is Africa, right? Specifically West Africa we're talking about. And there are a lot of nuances that they don't just move. It doesn't move the same way it does when you're in the West, and how you can make things happen. I'm a perfect example of that. And I learned that lesson. And I think Akon is learning that lesson through this process. And we are all to be learning that lesson through this process. Okay, Mute says, very few of these kind of new cities work out all over the world. I think you were going to say the capacity, and there was something else that cut off. Joanna says, it seems that knowingly or unknowingly, Akon was the front man for a grift. Possibly, quite possibly. Okimute says, only a few such dream cities materialize the world over because of the huge capital required, a lot of investment required. Dimitri Thompson says, when you're looking to create something that big and looking for funding, you really can't be silent on that. Good point. Kwame says, I agree. Less said, the better until it's done. So there's some disagreements here. I think, look, if you're looking for funding, right, Akon can find the funding without making it public, right? Because the thing, I think the challenge is that because every time Akon's name was brought up, the Akon City was brought up. And I think people in the Senegalese government are hearing this Akon City, but nothing really being developed there. And I think at some point, their whole thought process is, well, what are we going to do here? Right. And especially if the land was given on loan, but wasn't actually fully paid for. Right. The thing is if he got investors and bought the land, it's not like if they would likely seize the land. He purchased it. As long as he purchased it, he bought it, paid his taxes to the government, and whoever owned it, whether it's the government's land or someone else's land, then I think it's a win and they're fine with it, right? Because they took that money. When this land is on loan and there's expected to be a revenue stream coming in from the announcements that are happening, I think that's when the government potentially steps in and says, okay, this isn't working. So you also have to look at it from their standpoint, whether you're cynical or not. I think that is one way to see it. I think I'm just looking at it from all the sides here. It sounds like everybody else could hear. It sounds like one person was unable to hear what was going on. So let me know if you guys can still hear, or if you're having challenges hearing, let me know. So yeah, let's get back into the video and then I'll give some more commentary on the other side.
Well, you're going to have casinos there?
The area where all the hotels and
like
all the
Vegas.
casinos,
Okay.
that little circle,
there you go.
It's like about the size of small
There you
Vegas
go.
city.
There you go.
That's about the same size.
Mm.
Yeah, like if you think Vegas, that's what that is.
And what type of funding was that going to take? How many billions?
Originally it was done at $6 billion.
$6 billion.
Yeah, but with all the new technology now and the capabilities we have today, we're going to skim that down. It's going to be short, like way less than that.
Got you.
Not way less, but it's going to be at least another.
Yeah, we need to know.
But what would you say to the people?
Okay, so just to come back to that amount, right? So the amount that's always been described is $6 billion. He just said with new technology, he was probably going to be able to shave about $1.5 billion off of that. So that meant that it would cost about $4 billion to get this off the ground. Now, the next question is going to be, what does he say to the critics and what did they get wrong? So we'll get to that in a second, but I just want to answer some questions and give some, get some thoughts from you guys who are watching along. So Kwame says, I agree. Oh, that's already said that. Kwame said should have read less said. Yeah, I got you. Phoenix Ingo says the audio has been fine. Okay, Dimitri Thompson says you can't build a city with $6 billion. It costs $1 to $2 billion to build a stadium. That is a good point. When you think about a football stadium or a basketball stadium, now basketball arena, it does cost quite a substantial amount, but generally that's how much it costs in the West. I don't know if those costs are the same and the cost of construction is the same for West Africa, but you do make a good point that in many places to build just a stadium, like a football stadium, depending on how you look at football, whether you call it soccer or football or American football, those stadiums are large, 60 to 70 to 80,000 people stadiums. They do cost $1 to $2 billion to build in Europe and in the United States. I don't know if that's how much it costs to build in West Africa. I think the cost of labor is cheaper. The cost of materials are cheaper and maybe a little easier to build for less. But it does seem like this is a pretty ambitious project, and $4 to $6 billion does feel a little bit on the lower end to build something this substantial. Oki Mute says 6 billion USD would be too little. I know based on what's going on in Echo Atlantic. No, this is a new city that's being built in Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. And that has quite a substantial price tag associated with it too. Phoenix Indigo says, how was he listing dollar amounts if he didn't have the experts assisting him? I don't know if he had experts assisting him. That is the assumption that people are making. And just a note here on stadium costs. Piro Dusa says stadium costs are a scam. All right, so there's some other questions and comments coming from Instagram, and I want to make sure I address them. So Sang NK says, the problem is that the Black diaspora wasn't on board. This should have been done on a phase-by-phase basis. So start something that brings in income and then grow it. Even organic cities rarely, and I think he was going to say move at this speed. Miss, what is it? Shay Jens says, we have to learn the importance of the term move in silence in general. Okay. Sang NK says, so these cities rarely grow full-blown from the word go. It's phased. We need to learn to do things in a phased process. That's a good point. Yeji says he should have partnered with the Senegalese government to spread the risk. Not sure what he did there. Possibly so. RNDC Music says, does Senegalese government actually sell the land? Because in America, you can buy land all day, but if you don't pay your taxes, it ain't your land no more. So end of the day, the land's not yours. So yes, you can buy land, but every country kind of has the right to take back the land. It happens all the time. Even though eminent domain is not in every constitution, it doesn't necessarily work like that. Every country has its ability to take land because when you're in charge, you can do what you want. And so that happens frequently. So I don't know if that was the situation here. Sensei says, I agree. We tell all the people our plans. Yeah, so that's to the comment of moving in silence. Self-Care Agent TV says, how do you explain Dubai, Sydney, and others? So, now Dubai, let's talk about how much it costs to build Dubai. Because, I think this is an important example that people are talking about. So Dubai is pumping in $35 billion now. So the total costs to build Dubai is difficult to pinpoint definitively, as it represents a continuous process of development and construction over many years. However, estimates suggest that the city's infrastructure, including the mall and all the other places, cost tens to hundreds of billions of dollars. So one report estimated that the 10-year construction costs of AED, 128 billion, approximately 35 billion USD, including the development of a new city around a certain area in the airport. That was according to Yahoo News. Then there was 1.5 billion to build one specific area, and the mall itself cost about 20 billion to build. So just to kind of give you a sense of the cost, right, and the difference. So that was to build Dubai. So I think it's helpful to have those numbers so you understand how much it costs to build Dubai. And this was supposed to be a futuristic city that was supposed to be all clean energy. So Brenda says, generally, you get approval from the government, local, etc., any type of gaming board with the plans and renderings. You bid out the projects to licensed and bonded companies that obtain the necessary permits to facilitate their scope of work. So that's how the process generally happens. Phoenix Indigo says, oh, okay, he mentioned the engineers not being able to travel during the pandemic, so maybe I misunderstood. Well, that was for doing the surveying, right? Or some surveying. But that was also 1 year of the 5 years we've been talking about. The African Chronicle says, to be on board, you need a bit of transparency, build a city by phase with steps, and certainly better communication to manage people and stakeholders' expectations. And Pirodusa says, Dubai didn't have to look for outside funding. That is true. They built it all with their own financing. That is true. Okay, let's get back into the video, hear what he has to say, and let's hear what he has to say.
People who have been making videos in the past couple of weeks about the Akon City thing, like basically trying to, discredit it. Like, what would be your message to them in terms of what they're getting wrong?
No, they're not getting anything wrong. They're just getting information that's not correct, right? It's not them because they don't know. What I would tell them is, like, don't be so quick to just repost something. Take the time to do research. Because back in the day when you had investigative journalists, they would actually get the information and then you get the real information, right? And I understand it's entertainment. It's cool because in time, it's all going to come out anyway. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to all blow over. People going to forget. And while they forgetting, the work's still going on. Then when I finally announce and everybody gets there, then they're going to be like, oh, shit. Then you're going to look at all of those negative shits and be like, damn, this shit was no joke after all. Like, I didn't understand how.
Apologies, YouTube, for all the profane language. I thought I cut out as much of it as I could, but it's hard to do. But you guys get the idea, right? He's saying, look, those people who've been posting it, and it seemed like a lot of people took joy in posting that this did not come to fruition. And I don't know why, because, had this been able to be done right, this would have been a great draw for Senegal from all over West Africa, bringing more people in than they currently do. And they have quite a substantial amount of tourism. You could have really expected to see some significant tourism and some real interesting, ways that people can then mimic what was happening. This could have been a template for how we upgrade some of our cities on the continent. And it really is unfortunate that, it's getting stopped in its tracks the way it has been currently and how people have been responding to it. So some other comments are here. Dimitri says he probably should have started with a couple of neighborhoods instead of swinging for the fence. Probably true. Kwame says Dangote in Nigeria has oil refinery, has cost 6 billion, cost billions. 6 billion sounds very small amount of money for a city like that. Maybe it was not thought through properly. Phoenix Indigo says, I personally was looking forward to seeing it come to fruition. As was I, Phoenix. As was I. Okay, so let's get back into the video, hear more from Akon, and let's get his thoughts.
How crazy the politics was. I'm now learning, like, damn, this shit is, from the eyes of them, is way bigger than me just building a city. Because it was just a legacy thing for me. But I didn't realize the impact that it was going to actually bring to the continent until recently, right? So think about all of the agendas that's in Africa and why something like this would be personable. Always ask yourself the question, why there's so many negative, like reports out there, and it's only one-sided. Whenever you see things happening only one-sided, you got to know it's guerrilla warfare. It's warfare.
Definitely.
So that's pretty much the full extent of what he had to say here. I've seen him talk about the regret of talking about it too early and not having everything in place and needing to have thought things through a little bit more on another interview with a guy named, was it Bootleg Kev, based in Arizona. So similar conversation. I think this one was a little bit more in depth because there was more questions asked here. And so I'm interested to see what comes out of this next, right? Does he end up doing more now that the government has decided to, does he end up doing more now that the government has decided to take on some of this construction and, you know, still allow him to be, to take part in some of this? So we'll have to see where this goes. And if this does actually end up in a situation where he does end up building a portion of what he had planned to build. So now, the reason why I wanted to have this discussion today is because, you know, I always talk about three things on this platform, right? Getting people to move, invest, and visit the continent of Africa. And when it comes to those three things, right? Investing in land, it's very easy for things not to go the way that you planned when you start working on housing development projects that you're building from scratch, right? So here we're talking about the process which could have benefited maybe from having a large construction group that has signed on, but having the funding to pay them to start with the construction. You know, I do think that there was some challenges there, and that's something that people do need to take into consideration, is that there just was not enough funding. So Self-Care Agent says USD $1 billion in West Africa equals 562 billion. I hope I convert that right. Don't kill me. Well, I mean, I think, you know, not really. I think $1 billion US is $1 billion US in West Africa, right? There are so many different currencies. So I don't know if you can really translate that to real, you can't translate that to different currencies, right? 1 billion is 1 billion. I think what we're trying to get at is, can 1 billion build what we think it can build, regardless of whether or not you're talking about local currency or if we're talking about USD or euros. So Kwame says he should not give up. Oki Mute says if he works with the government, then he might be successful if he tries again, especially having learned from this. We will see. We will see. But that was it. That was all Akon had to say, and that was a cautionary tale. I just wanted to tell you guys, look, when it comes to building on the continent, make sure you're working with somebody you trust. Make sure you're working with someone who has a reputation, because we've all gone through issues building on the continent. I will tell you right now, I'm going to be having an interview coming up with Leslie Jones again, who, you know, had 2 different properties that she acquired, and man, did she go through it. And I want to share her story with you all. So be on the lookout for that, because there will be more coming. West Stand says, Akon is lying. At $6 billion, you would need at least 3 parties to de-risk such investment. If it's a PPP model on the continent, Europe and Africa invest from 5 million to 100 million USD, and China invests 1 billion or more. Okay. Well, guys, thanks for watching. As always, just be careful when it comes to buying land on the continent. Be careful what you announce beforehand. Make sure you have things in place that you need in order to get the support you need. What I would say is, the last thing I would say to this is, had he had a few buildings first, as you guys mentioned, with his own financing and funding, to say, I put my own money into this. That's how much I believe in this. And then gone and sought other financing, I think he would have had a better chance, right? So like, had he started on his own with his own cash, because from what I understand, I've heard him say he could be set for life from that Lady Gaga deal he did for her first album, right? And so, you know, all the publishing he gets from that, you know, from what I understand, I've heard that that's what he has said. And so, and of course, T-Pain's music and others, and even his own music, right? Having his own record label and all the touring that he's done. Now, of course, his own money, you know, he may have been able to put 10 million of his own cash into it. I don't know how much he has liquid, but you know, that's a fraction of the 6 billion. But you know, you start with something like the buildings he has on site now. Had he started with those buildings and said, this is what we have and we're building around this, he may have had a better chance to move quicker, to get more investors, you know. But I do think that was probably one of the areas where he made a mistake, is he spoke way too soon. Alma Watson says, a reputation for honesty, specifically, not just reputation. True. Shout out to Leslie Jones in the building. As I mentioned, you will be getting a chance to hear from her and her story about what it was like for her when she bought land in West Africa and the lessons she's learned, the recourse that she's had to take, and the challenges through the process. We're definitely going to talk about it. But yeah, guys, I want to say again, thanks for watching. We will see you guys all on the next video.